Hi, a warm welcome to ExpertsConnect on TeachSomebody.com, and I'm your host, Kadian Davis Owusu. Today, we're privileged to have the renowned STEAM evangelist and master sculptor, Bridgette Mongeon, and our conversation will be about 3D technology, fine art, and design in STEAM education. Hi, Brigitte. How are you doing?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm doing great.
You're welcome. Brigitte, please tell us, what are you most passionate about?
Good question. I'm most passionate about helping others to find themselves and bring out the best that they can be, no matter what that may be. So that's what I'm most passionate about.
That's awesome. And now that you said that, can you please tell us a bit about your background?
There's a lot. The background would take up the whole program, but you could say, in some manners, I'm a Renaissance woman because I have a lot of facets to me. I am a sculptor and I specialize in doing monumental sculptures as well as figurines, tabletop, life size. I'm also an author. I have several nonfiction adult books. The last one was 3D technology and fine art and craft, exploring 3D printing, scanning, sculpting, and milling. Love the book, very proud of it. It was trying to bridge the gap between fine art and technology. And because the book is used in maker spaces and in education, but also collected by fine art museums, I kind of feel like I did that. Also love the fact that in that book, I was able to search the world over to find the cream of the crop artists who were using 3D tech and fine art. I'd love to do just a whole book of that because that was a lot of fun. But it was also kind of like wrangling cats, trying to get everybody to give me their images and etc. I'm also a children's author and probably most known for in the children's books and education is not for my books, but for the sculpture of Alice in Wonderland's Mad Hatter Tea Party, which has received worldwide attention. I kind of got into STEAM and STEM by accident, and I love it. And I love sharing that with other people and encouraging that. I'm a gamma and a mom, and I lead a women's hiking group. So there you go. That's all of me in a nutshell.
Wow, that's awesome. You are awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. So, as you mentioned, STEM, we all know what STEM is. It's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. However, you are an advocate for STEAM. Can you please define STEAM and tell us why STEAM skills will drive innovation beyond 2020?
Well, there's a lot of people that don't understand STEAM as compared to STEM. And I was doing a lecture once and I mentioned STEAM, and this woman came to the podium afterwards and she said, "You have no idea what you're talking about. Art doesn't have any business in there." And if you understand what STEM is, it was to encourage education in these disciplines because I realized they were not going to have enough students that were graduating that could fulfill all this need. Art in STEM, making it STEAM, which I always say, defend the A, go with STEAM, is to not in addition to, but it informs STEM. I defy anybody to have a science fair where you're not using art to show the science, either whether it's in a poster board or building a volcano. You're using your hands, you're creating. So that's what I'm talking about. And I've seen over and over again how artists who have incorporated and embraced STEAM have been able to influence things in profound manner. So it's really exciting to see STEAM education grow and become a thing.
Yeah, but exactly how do you see growing beyond 2020?
Well, I think by the very nature of the curiosity. I mean, anybody who's into science has to be curious. Even those people in at math, and you're building stuff with engineering, so they all go hand in hand. The art along with it, the creating, the building. It's just a given. I think that also artists have a tendency to think outside the box, where some people in those other disciplines may not be able to do that. And if you can look outside the box, if you can push the boundaries a little bit, then who knows? I always say you don't know what you don't know, but when you find out, it'll blow your mind. And I think that's what artists are doing. They're pushing the technology. Even in Autodesk, they said, we wanted these people to work with our tools because that's what artists do. If it doesn't do what they want it to do, then artists can find a way to make it do it. And I think that's the point. And I'm excited to be a part of that group.
Yes, that's good. Awesome. So, what are the benefits of STEAM in education?
Well, I think for those people who are working with art, if you can incorporate STEAM inside of your art classes, one of the benefits is that there's more funding. So where they may be taking funding away for art, you put a 3D printer in there or CNC machine, and you make it more engineering and technology, and then you can have some of that funding that is created through government and organizations come through to your class, which I think is really an incredible thing. And people really need to tap into that. I've seen it with my own work. I'm working on a sculpture of Booker T. Washington for Booker T. Washington High School. And instead of just creating this monumental sculpture, I already incorporate 3D tech in my work, but they're also making a whole STEAM education program around the creating, including where this piece is going. And they're going to do a windmill near it, and they're doing specific gardens near it. And so they're taking the whole thing and making it into a STEAM education program for the students, not only of their school, but for other schools. And that expands the funding that they can get because it's STEAM.
That's impressive, Brigitte.
Oh, thanks. I didn't think of it all. I just keep encouraging people and going, how about if we do this? How about if we do that? I'm an idea person.
Yes. So, Brigitte, how does 3D fine art and digital technology lend themselves to STEAM?
How does 3D fine art? Well, I will use my practice as an example because well, I know what I know and I know my work. I use 3D tech in several different ways. I may sculpt something small, as what we call a clay maquette, and then I will 3D scan it. So I'll have a 3D scan, which we did with this. Let's take Booker T. Washington, for example. I did a small maquette. They approved it. We 3D scanned it. We found a chair for the period that Booker T was alive. We 3D scanned that chair. Now I'm marrying them together inside the computer, and we're going to enlarge them to a monumental height. Then what I will do is I will send those 3D files, and they'll take the G code for that, and they'll CNC, computer numerically controlled milling it out, and a urethane foam. Now what that does is that gives me an armature that I can work on. So where it used to take me 3 months to make an armature and weld it together and then put the stuff on it and then pack the clay in there, now I can get that in a week or 2 weeks. So it's increased the amount of production I can do and decrease the amount of time that it takes me to get things done. Um, you can even, if you wanted to now, when my book first came out, they were still just toying with all of this. And I have since had a vendor came to me. I could take the 3D model and then I could have it actually 3D printed for bronze casting. So let's take for Booker T. Washington. When Booker T's done, what will have to happen is it has to go through the traditional process of bronze casting, which is pretty much the same, you know,
Yeah.
for forever and ever. And that is, a mold needs to be made of it. And then from that mold, they have to paint a wax with a very thin layer. And then they take that wax and they dip it in a slurry mixture, and it goes in and out and it creates a shell. Then they burn that shell out and they put metal in. Now I could do away with all of that and have everything 3D printed with the sprues and everything from the foundry, and have that burned out, so I don't have to make a mold. I don't have to make a wax. I don't have to go through any of that process. I go right from my digital design to bronze casting. Now you can 3D print in bronze, but I always say there's a few difficulties when you're doing 3D printing in fine art. One is the build size. Can you get as big enough as you need? The other is the material. Can that material come in that you need for bronze? And then the third is the cost. And right now, 3D printing in bronze is not a doable thing. But there are many ways around that. Like I said, in another instance, another artist that I mentioned in my book, who is creating this very large sculpture of a Native American Indian, they're actually 3D printing the mold,
Yeah.
so they can pour the bronze right into the mold. They don't have to, again, they don't have to go through the rubber and the wax and everything. They're 3D printing the mold. So it's just fascinating how that happens. Now, 3D scanning and the CNC milling and the 3D printing are things that I use often. In another instance, for example, the monumental sculpture of Alice in Wonderland, we are now reducing her down. So we created all the designs on it and all the detail and 9-foot characters. And then we had it 3D scanned, and we're taking that 3D scan and reducing it down, and then having that 3D printed. And then I'm making that into molds so that I can then sell the small maquettes in bronze, as like I had this large piece in the park. So what that does for me is that allows me to monetize my work more. So I have more things to sell. I may do a monumental sculpture of a mascot for a school, but I can also create it as a small thing that can be sold in their gift stores. So it's been very interesting. And also with the Alice in Wonderland project, now what we're doing is I hit 150 items in there. So now this is the Cheshire Cat smile. I don't know if you can see it. We're taking some of those items that were in there, like the crying baby that turns into a pig, and we 3D printed them out as Christmas ornaments. And
Yeah.
so now we can take these and sell these. Here is this is a cabinet that's in the Alice in Wonderland, but this is it with it 3D printed and all the scaffolding that's on there to hold it up. There are some difficulties. There are some problems with working with the 3D prints, and especially going down. But it's all a matter of it's a trial and error, and that's why I wrote my book, because I had to figure all this out. I wrote a book so that other people coming along behind me didn't have to go through all this. They could just use the book to figure it out. And actually now I'm starting an regular Instagram post with another company, and it'll all be STEAM and STEM. So I'm going to take everybody through from the very basics of 3D printing all the way up in how everything works. So we're going to come out with maybe 1 or 2 a week, and people can watch this Instagram post and learn and share it with their schools and their students. So that's a long explanation. Sorry.
Yeah, but it's quite impressive. And I've gathered that it's very innovative, flexible, and through the 3D technology, you're able to monetize your work through the miniature pieces that you have created. So it's very good.
It is very good. But
Yes.
again, it's challenging. It's challenging. For example, the Alice in Wonderland that translated large, once we started to reduce it down, like this is the cutoff of you'll see Alice in her with her hand and she's sitting in the chair. We had them 3D print a section of this because I noticed that the textures disappeared. They were there large, but when you reduced it down, they got small. So, and some of these things like the little lace on her collar was so thin it would almost disappear. So we had to do like a test print to see what the problems might be so that we could then modify them in the smaller print to make sure that it read correctly. And in the exact same way, I did a monumental sculpture of Eve from Adam and Eve, and I had an 18-inch maquette, and I 3D scanned it, and I got it into the warehouse because we had the CNC milling, and the way they do that is it's really interesting. They will create them with interacting parts. So I could bolt her arm in and I can bolt her torso together or her legs together. So it comes apart and it makes it easier for me to work on it. I don't have to be on scaffolding the whole time. So we had it up and it was in the warehouse, and I stepped back and I looked at it and I went, there's something wrong with that right foot. What is going on with that? And then I got a measuring tape and I put one end on the knee and one end on the ankle. And the right leg was 1.5 inches smaller than the left leg. Now, when it's 18 inches, that didn't show up. But when you enlarged it to 14 feet, that expanded the error. So there are a lot of things you have to watch out when you're using the 3D and fine art.
So I'm curious, how did you mitigate this challenge?
The challenge with Eve,
Yeah, with the
I cut off her foot, and I brought it down. And I'm used to cutting everything off. When with Alice in Wonderland, they say off with their heads. Everything their heads comes off because not only do their heads come off, and it's easier for me to work on it, but it's also easy for me to flip it upside down when you're sculpting. If you're a right-handed person, you have a tendency to really focus on the right-hand side of the sculpture, and your brain has a hard time seeing it any other way. So if you can flip it upside down, then you are looking at the left side through your right vision, if that makes sense. So I just like that, I cut her leg off and I increased it. Spray foam works great, insulation spray foam, and I could also modify it because with Eve, she worked really well, but I told the foundry, and it was nice to have a 3D model to work with because then we could measure. Remember, she's just 18 inches, but she's going up to 14 feet. We could measure her ankle because we needed to make sure that we could get stainless steel going all the way up her. If we didn't, she could break and fall off if the design wasn't to the point where they could get stainless in there. So with that, I can work with the foundry and go, okay, what if I modified it and I pull her leg back here and I change, she's like on these little waves, and I change this wave to be this. Will this give me the stainless? And they said yes. And it's interesting because the guy that was doing the American in Oklahoma, he had the same problem. They had to have an elevator go up the leg of the Indian, and they couldn't fit the elevator chute in there. So they put drapery on the side of him and switched the drapery around so that when he's created that big, they'll be able to have an elevator go up his leg and the drapery. So it helps with the engineering of the project as well, because there's a lot to installing a monumental sculpture. It has to be safe.
Going back to Alice, your Alice project, can you please explain the relevance of the Alice in Wonderland project to STEAM?
Well, Alice has a life of her own. First of all, to understand that the author, Charles Dodson, his name is Lewis Carroll, but his real name is Charles Dodson, was a mathematician. So for me, bringing STEAM into the sculpture, etc., um, was I feel like the author would have really liked it because he's into math. And we hid some math. We hid 150 items inside the sculpture so kids could go around and go, I see this, I see that. And we did that because in honor of the story is that old. But with the STEAM education, because of all of the things that we're doing with it, the 3D scanning, we not only 3D scanned it to bring it down, but we 3D scanned it in a second way. And that was we 3D scanned the entire area of the park where the sculpture sits. And now we're looking for a college that wants to take those scans and help me to make a free educational resource online. So you would be able to walk through and maybe you would click on the Mad Hatter's hat and you would learn the reason why they called the Mad Hatter was because of the chemicals they used in making the felting of the hat drove the hatters mad. So you would learn things by interacting online in this virtual or augmented reality of Alice. So we're also asking educators to help us to come up with other different types of STEAM curriculum that we can put on the page. For example, one woman did a whole thing on physics and in a rabbit going down a hole. And if you change the shape of the hole, how does it change the direction of the rabbit and the wear of the rabbit, et cetera, et cetera. So I would like to see more of that on alicesculpture.com so that teachers can go there and get some things. We also have a dodecahedron and some other elements that teachers that are free printables that teachers can print out and use in their classroom. So it's going to become, I hope, will become a wonderful area for teachers to go to get more education on STEAM in the classroom because Alice in Wonderland is timeless, you know?
I love that story.
It's just timeless, yes.
That's quite impressive work, and I wish you all the best with it. So, Brigitte, what's your message to educators on how they can integrate STEAM elements into their existing school curricula?
Well, I think there's a lot of ways to introduce STEAM into the curriculum. Are we talking art teachers or overall teachers?
Overall, teachers, yeah.
Overall. I think I think for one thing, I think getting a 3D printer in the school is really a wonderful thing to have. I think that a lot of teachers have a tendency to go, "What's the best printer for us to get?" Yada yada. You could talk with the maker spaces of your area. For example, we have a maker space here in Houston, Texas called TXRX, and they are working with the school systems in Houston. So if you have never worked with a 3D printer, you don't know how temperamental they can be. But you can rent a 3D printer from them, and if something happens to that 3D printer, then you can trade it in for something else, or they'll come and help you fix it. I also know, for example, I interviewed a young girl a couple years ago, 12 years old, Coco, and she built her own 3D printer. So I would encourage parents and teachers to do that. Don't just give your kid a 3D printer. There are many resources, and many of them are free resources online so that you can build your own 3D printer, whether it's going to be a 3D printer that prints fused deposition modeling, or there are even free resources for being able to do my favorite, a 3D printer that prints clay. So I think 3D printing is the first thing. I think trying to encourage kids in being curious,
Yeah.
no matter whether it is the science or the engineering, etc., and then incorporating art principles that help to define that curiosity and help them to express that curiosity is a really good tool as well. There are so many free resources. I mentioned a lot of them in my book, but all you have to do is look online and you can see that there are many free resources, especially in the area of creating digital models and 3D printing, etc. So those are just a few ways. And then look at the alicesculpture.com page. Maybe we'll have some more for you.
Thank you. But Brigitte, I'm a little bit concerned about those in developing countries because 3D printers, aren't they very expensive?
Well, it's interesting that you say that because there are a couple companies who have actually donated 3D printing. If you do a Google search, there's one, and I wish I could tell you the country where they donated a 3D printer because these people could 3D print uh, if someone lost their arm, there is already a 3STL file to help them to create an arm for them. And so they would donate 3D printers to that area so that people could learn. So if developing countries needed those resources, I would go, and they wanted to do something like that, especially, can you imagine having a group of kids that could help other kids by printing these things for them? So I think that is really, really important to do. I'm sure there are STEAM programs that are out there and STEAM funding for other countries. And it would just take some research to figure that out. And I love research, so I'd be happy to look that up if I had time.
Okay, thank you. And Brigitte, how can people reach you?
The best way to reach me is through my website, creativesculpture.com. That's creativesculpture.com. And you could find me on Facebook and on Instagram. Please follow me on Instagram because those new STEAM things are going to be so much fun. I cannot wait to start them. We're starting them this week, so it's really exciting. And we have a company that's coming on board with us to help us with it. And it's basically, I'm going to, again, walk everybody through the processes from the very basics all the way through. And there's a lot to understand. A lot of people think that you could 3D print by pushing a button. It doesn't work that way. There's a lot of things that have to be done to a file. You have to know. And again, there's free resources out there. And if people aren't privy to that, I'm basically going to end up putting my whole book on Instagram. It's basically what it's going to be. It's slowly a little snippet. So yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it too. Brigitte, thank you so much for your willingness to share your knowledge with us. The information you provided on 3D technology and STEAM was very enlightening. To our audience, thank you so much for tuning in to Experts Connect. I'll see you next week where we will discuss exciting topics that will ignite your passion for learning. If you like the information presented, please feel free to head on over to teachsomebody.com and give us an applause. If you have questions or you'd like to add a comment, please do so in the comment section. Please also subscribe to our channel on YouTube and follow us on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. So I recently launched my Instagram. So please follow me, Katie Ann Davis Owusu, on Instagram. I'll be going live. So I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. Have a great rest of the week. Bye.
Bye. And as my motto says, go with STEAM.
Yes, definitely. Bye.
Bye-bye.